Disclaimer: a review code was provided by the developer. Disclaimer: in my personal opinion, Anodyne 2 Return to Dust is best experienced with as little information as possible going in. If you need to know more, keep watching, but otherwise, please play it. Speaking of, welcome to Please Play It, the series in which I implore you to please play it. Once in a while, you see a really cool indie game in development spread around on Twitter, and it just kind of sticks in your head afterward. For me, Anodyne 2 was that game, being available now on PC. The bulk of this game was made by two people, Sean Hantani and Marina Kitaka. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing names, and I'll probably wind up doing it again in this video. The game's hook is pretty apparent, utilizing a low-fidelity graphical style reminiscent of the boom of early PlayStation graphical styles in a way that's both eye-catching and efficient for the developers. And while it's the thing most people know this game for, Anodyne 2 is so much more than its graphical style. It's already cemented itself as one of my favorite games from this year, and I've enjoyed a lot of the new games I've gotten to play, so that's high praise. But what makes this game so great, and why did it have such an impact on me? Let's talk it out. In Anodyne 2, you'll play as Nova, a being created for one sole purpose: to clean nanodust, a substance akin to a plague that is affecting the world. Nova utilizes a device called the Nano Cleaner in her efforts to purify the residents of New Zealand and the land itself. In gameplay, this comes about in two primary ways. In 3D spaces, you as the player will explore and do some pretty light platforming to navigate New Zealand, looking for inhabitants afflicted by nanodust. Once found, you'll shrink to go inside their bodies as the game transitions to a top-down 2D style adventure game, akin to earlier Zelda titles. These 2D sections are more or less equivalent to Zelda dungeons, filled with combat and puzzles to solve. I reached out to Sean for a review code, and he very kindly provided me one, and it wasn't until I played the game that I even knew there were 2D sections, if that tells you how blindly I went in. While the 3D adventure areas fueled my imagination, I think the real gameplay highlight of this game are these overhead dungeon areas. I've never clicked too well with the older Zelda titles. I respect them, but they never engaged me all that much. Anodyne 2's dungeons did so much more effectively. You see, each dungeon is a representation of a person's mental space, whether it be directly or presenting a moment of time to you as the player. This means you'll either explore and advance along someone's struggles, or you'll see snapshots of their life, such as the case with a villager a character named Joff is working tirelessly to save. NPCs are scattered about the game space, giving more context to each area and helping you become more invested in the plight and New Zealand entirely. These aren't just areas to work through to get a new item, these are clever narrative devices that help the entire experience coalesce. The puzzles within are very smartly designed as well, keeping everything moving at just the right pace. Very rarely will you be stumped. Most often you'll solve things just quickly enough to feel like you've outsmarted the game, which results in a great feedback loop. If combat is your favorite part of games like this, you will probably find it to be lacking here, but everything else more than makes up for it. The 3D spaces are great too, but for different reasons. Like I said earlier, these are basically just hubs to talk to residents and find your next objective. On paper, these are so much simpler by comparison, but I was so effectively emotionally engaged by Anodyne 2 that I found great joy and fascination in exploring them, which stems from a few key components. The first point is obviously the visuals on display here. Not only does this help the game feel intangibly nostalgic for someone of my age, but the art direction surpasses the self-imposed limitation to become something truly striking and at times beautiful. This is a game influenced by 3D's growing pains, not one informed by them, so it still shows in proper widescreen with no frame drops and even manages to include some modern techniques like more advanced lighting. Exploring every inch of New Zealand is worth it just to see the artistry alone. The other reason these spaces work in spite of their simplicity is just due to the characters themselves. I almost hate to invoke Undertale as a comparison, but it just seems apt. This game has absolutely no qualms with being meta, weird, funny, charming, and irreverent. This marketplace character will be talked about to death by others, but they're a mole-tuber who laments that they have to cover the most popular games in their videos, when all they want to do is cover niche, smaller titles. As someone playing this game with an intent to cover it on his YouTube channel, this was a bit through the looking glass. The designs of a lot of these characters are just so weird and striking too. Your main characters, Palisade and Sea Psalmist, are both just really cool looking. Meanwhile, some of the peeps running around this city area are just so out there. One of the things that kept me going was just to see what other weird things would pop up. Another thing that endeared me so much to this game are its qualities that are a bit harder to elaborate on and define. This game just has such a warm, caressing feeling, yet one that also felt a bit empty and eerie, which, considering the ultimate narrative theme of the game, actually makes a lot of sense. The music is beautiful and cozy, yet just abstract enough to be a little off-putting even in its cheerier tracks. It fits perfectly. The locales leave enough to the imagination that it's easy to identify with them, but are also just defined enough to make you wonder about the functions of the world. For example, right out here, there's a car wash. By the way, just to make sure I've explained it, you can turn into a vehicle to get through the world quicker, but there's a car wash. It feels so weird and out of place, but it also kind of fits. You never see another car in this entire game that I can remember, yet here's a car wash. This speaks well to the weird tonal balance of this game. At times it's very emotional, and at others it's just plain goofy. It really shouldn't work, but somehow it pulls this balancing act off with aplomb in spite of being so hard to effectively pin down with a description. These things all combined made Anodyne 2 a gripping, emotional experience that I was thinking of even when I was away from it, which is always a fantastic thing in a game. This is the most I'd like to say while keeping things fairly spoiler-free to try to sell you on this game and still leave you a lot to experience for yourself. It would be a disservice for me to rob you of that, but trust me, I haven't even fully expressed what all this game has to offer. But if you're the type that becomes more interested by spoilers, or perhaps even already played the game, let's keep going because I just need to talk about the ending with somebody. These are going to be very loose, incoherent thoughts and speculations, but I had to get them out there somewhere. Let it speak to the strength of this game that I'm out here wondering about its lore to the point that I had to mention it here. But again, I'm straight up talking about the ending here, so be warned. Continue at your own risk. So as Anodyne 2 continues, it becomes clearer and clearer that the powers guiding Nova may not be working toward the traditional utopia one may imagine. You're cleaning all this dust to fill up a central chamber which will activate the Anodyne, something comparable to that part in End of Evangelion. You know the part. As things begin to get clearer, Nova winds up befriending some nano-sized members of a community who have embraced the dust, and begins to question her purpose and even life itself. It's at this point you begin to sympathize with air quote, the enemy, and begin to see the cracks in the Center's promise. The Center being the overseer of life in New Sinnoh, the city you start the game in. The Center has its roots in Nova, quite literally, as the beginning of the game establishes she has a living seed inside of her. As she befriends those in that town, that seed begins debilitating her and causing her to faint, and trying to push her back to her purpose of eliminating nanodust to fuel the Anodyne. The game has two endings that I know of. One where you comply and activate the Anodyne, and essentially just freeze the world for eternity. And one where you fight back against the Center and free the world from its grasp. This potentially opens the entirety of the world to become afflicted by the dust, but it frees the world of the Center's grasp and ensures everyone has a free will and the ability to seek their own lot in life. To be their own being, question existence as they wish, and try to find their own purpose. This is presented as the traditional good ending, with Nova, a baby, a cute dog, and one of Nova's dust friends sailing off to the sea together to forge their own lives free of restriction. However, there's a part near the end of the game that, to me, calls all of this into question. In the desert, you find an NPC who speaks in unfinished event scene code, who pulls you into a glitched out world. Shortly, you find yourself shifting entirely to a different perspective. You now find yourself playing as a human named Nora from an isometric perspective. Nora works a shitty retail job she hates, keeps to herself, and basically just drifts through life one day to the next. No ambitions, no goals, just kind of taking whatever life throws at her and being complacent. She takes note of a gargoyle statue outside of her apartment window, but then it disappears, and then it winds up outside of her apartment door, and then she finds it alive in a nearby hallway, and the game suddenly shifts yet again to being a suspenseful horror game as you escape from it. I'm underselling it here for the sake of getting to the point, but trust me, this was a shift that was just as effective as it was simple. As Nora, you'll make your way back to a computer where you have an offer to escape to New Theeland, and if you accept, you wind up back in New Theeland as Nova. Digimon has me used to kids transporting into computer screens to escape their problems, but the suggestions this has for Anodyne's plot are immense, and are why I have this section of the video to begin with. With these circumstances at play, what does all this mean? Loosening up on how unrealistic the living gargoyle and computer transportation aspects are, this heavily implies that everything in Anodyne 2 is just an escape from monotony, at least how I read it. A chance to shun the problems and realities of life, to lose yourself in something imagined. That happy ending earlier where Nova forges her own path, this adds a whole new dimension to it with this mindset. What seemed like a great ending with a bright future ahead may just be encased in sadness. All an imaginary escape as Nora avoids her problems and just imagines herself accomplishing what she wished she could in real life. That that hits really hard for someone my age living in this time on Earth. I avoided mentioning Anodyne 1 in this video because I'm still playing it, but I know the general plot beats there, and it has incredibly interesting implications for that game too. Not many games have made me think about their stories to this degree, and the fact that Anodyne 2 continually and quite naturally reshaped my perception of its tone and message is quite a feat. The entire segment with Nora in her apartment immediately went down as one of my favorite moments in any video game ever. If you've played through Anodyne 2, I won't tell you to respond to me with your theories in the comments because I don't want anyone spoiled down below. Instead, maybe join Analgesic Productions Discord and head to their spoiler channel to talk this stuff out. It's really quite something. Anyway, that's what I wanted to put out there and see if other people read it the same way. This has been an unusually structured video for me, but I hope it proved entertaining the whole way through, just like Anodyne 2 did for me. And a shout out to my patrons if they made it this far in the video past the spoiler stuff. Thank you.